meeting to order.
Call for a motion to.
We need a motion to accept last month's minutes, please. I got Dick and Ron. All the yeas? Yeas?
Yep.
Any nays? Okay. Okay, first order of business, we'll go through the dockets.
The docket procedure is what I want to present. Ryan, I guess everyone else has heard it by this time. But for each resolution and motion, I prepare a docket, which then if the committee members are asked to sign at the committee meeting. I am proposing instead to allow me to prepare a master docket for each committee. All of the resolutions and motions are noted on this master docket, and each will be separately voted on. But the committee will be asked to sign just one piece of paper. You would sign the master docket with everything on it, and the statement is the resolutions and motions listed on the above docket have been separately considered and voted on. All resolutions, except those specifically rejected by the committee, are hereby forwarded to the board for action. So that is the only change is that it's all on one docket, the master docket that you would sign, bless you, as opposed to, passing around the paper as the meeting is going on and the committee members are signing each docket. The two previous committees have agreed to do that, and I would want a motion by this committee then if you approve or not the new procedure.
Does everyone understand what you just explained, Ron, Jack? So I need a motion from Tom and then Dick, second. All yeas?
Yep.
Any nays? Okay.
All right, thank you very much. So I think Brian is up.
Well,
Did you want to do dockets?
Oh, you want me to do
yeah,
dockets?
you have to do
Okay.
dockets first.
All right, state aid funds in the Board of Elections accounts received for electronic polling pads, $51,900. So I would want a vote as to whether approval or not, or if there's any objections, I would so note that right here on the docket.
Okay. Yeas?
Aye.
Nays? No.
Thank you. Appropriating New York State Department of Homeland Security grant funds for information technology to enhance cybersecurity in the amount of $49,824.
Any yeas?
Yep.
Okay. Any nays? No? Okay.
Adopt the New York State Deferred Compensation Plan to be administered by New York State. Participant fees are a mere fraction of any other proposal. There are 245,000 state and municipal employee participants. There is no audit requirement, which would save our plan as proposed for this 2019 would be $5,800 annually, plus personnel time to facilitate that audit. The agreement would remain in effect until or unless the board chose another plan, otherwise eliminating the need for future RFPs for this service.
What is the deferred compensation plan, just so I can understand?
It's a benefit offered to all employees. It's voluntary. If they're interested, they can have deferrals from their paycheck. They go directly to the company, which today is Mass Mutual, has been for the last 6 years. It would now then be New York State Deferred Compensation. That check is made by the treasurer every 2 weeks to whoever the vendor is chosen.
So it's just a change.
It's a 457.
Yeah, changing the vendor,
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
457 plan is what it's called, and it's governed by state statute.
Okay, thank you, I didn't understand.
Greg, go ahead.
I just have a question on that too. Is there, right now, do they have a percentage of allowance, or is yours like $25 minimum?
No, there is no minimum. Each participant chooses their own, funding, whatever funds they want to invest their monies in, that each fund has their own percentage that is, fees that are charged to that participant.
But I mean, like, can they invest more, they can invest $25?
They can invest it, yes, there is a limit, I
Because-
forget what
because
the
I think
limit
that's
is
gonna
now.
change.
Usually there's a maximum limit,
Yeah,
yeah,
but there
but
was-
not a minimum,
Really,
But
and
do
I
they
think that's
put it-
gonna change under the New York one,
is it?
I think so. I
No,
think
there
there's
is,
a
there is a
3%.
minimum,
Is
it
it?
is, $10 per payroll.
I
That
thought
is
it
the
was
minimum.
3%.
No, it's a $10 per payroll minimum. And there is a maximum, I don't know what that amount is, but it's
So-
taken,
Well,
you choose what you want to be
Pre-tax.
deducted and that same amount is deducted from your payroll every
Every 2
payroll.
weeks.
We don't, the county doesn't match contribution,
No,
obviously,
there's
because
no.
we have the state pension system. The other thing to keep in mind is that anyone can invest with any firm they would like, but at any rate they would like outside. This is just our county preferred method that's set up for employees with people coming in.
It's basically a 401k without a non-matching.
Yep.
It just has a different name because it's
That's right.
government, so.
Thank you.
Coming out
So,
pre-tax.
what's that?
Coming out before tax,
Yeah, yeah.
so it will be tax.
So, everyone in favor of that?
Aye.
Yeas are good? Nays? Okay, two, okay.
Resolution to adopt local law 6, imposing a tax on occupants of hotel or motel rooms and other short-term room rentals in Lewis County.
That
We set the public hearing
Yeah,
before.
public hearing.
Now this is to adopt the local law that the full board would adopt. Did I
After
get
the
that
public
right?
hearing,
And that-
right. The public hearing will be held on
Right,
November
right.
5.
Right.
This would be the resolution to adopt.
Resolution, and in that resolution will be anything under 30 days, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Right, okay,
Mhm.
so,
Yep.
everyone,
No.
Aye.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeas are 4, John Raymond with an A.
Local law introductory, 7 of 2019, to rescind local law 5 of 2019, overriding the tax levy limit established by general municipal law, the 2% tax cap for the Lewis County 2020 budget. And you would set the public hearing for November 19.
So we're setting the public hearing to rescind the tax cap the same day of the budget hearing.
Mhm.
So after today's workshop and after you guys get a hold of the budget and get to make changes, if you don't wanna go over the tax cap, then on the 19th, we will approve the budget and rescind going over the tax cap. If you do wanna go over the tax cap, then you just vote down the tax cap.
Everyone understand that, Tom?
Aye.
Okay, all yeas? Dick? So
Yeah, I'm confused, I guess, as to why we wouldn't just leave it alone until we know where we're gonna be. There must be a timing issue to this.
We do it every year.
You have to bring the introductory law when you set the public hearing,
Okay.
so that's why we have it.
Okay, I'm fine with
So
it.
good, okay, so 5 yeas.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I did have one, sorry for this, I did get the resolution, but I did not get it in the packet. It was to transfer contingency funds of $200 into the county clerk account for expense to destroy documents.
So this is a silly issue that has come up, but our document shredding, we typically pin to DSS because they got reimbursed for it. The state has said, good try, but you're not allowed to make everybody's documents get reimbursed. So we didn't put any money in the clerk's budget for document destroying, so
Do we do that in-house, or do we bring it?
we
back?
hire a truck company.
Confident, okay.
So since the clerk is doing our record storage management, we run it through her office.
All yeas?
Aye.
Nays, none.
Right, that's it, that's what I have to go, if you wanna do motions, motion to authorize Jenny Jones to refill a community services worker.
That passed the other board.
Put it,
Yep.
so, yeas?
Yep.
Any nays? Okay.
To authorize refilling the Director of Office for the Aging effective immediately due to resignation.
Yeas?
Yep.
With regret.
Huh?
With regret.
Who retired? Berkeley?
No, Office of the
Kelly.
Oh, I think it's some, oh, Kelly, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of something else.
What do you think?
The other Berkeley.
Berkeley?
Not Eric.
Oh, in Jenny's department, Carolyn. Yeah. No, she
No,
was
that's already been back.
a leadership position, I've done that.
Just me not knowing what I'm talking.
To authorize Sheriff Carpinelli to refill a part-time dispatcher due to resignation to accept a full-time position elsewhere.
Aye.
Yep.
Okay, so I have Jerry. So is this another instance where we train someone and they're offered a full-time job in the same type of work somewhere else?
No,
No.
this is a
Okay.
different situation.
A different-
I know
okay.
what you're referring to, this
No,
particular.
I'm not referring to anything, but I know that we train them.
Because they're the CO, part-time CO
Right.
as well, we give them CO training. I
Right.
believe. That wasn't the case. for
Okay,
this.
alright, I was just curious. Okay. So you got 5 yeas, so.
Okay. Thank you.
So that was the second part-time dispatcher we've lost in 2 months.
To authorize Matt O'Connor to refill a full-time cleaner effective immediately.
Yep, all four.
Yeah. Any nays? No?
Thank you, that is all.
Okay. So, let's go right into what we probably have.
Okay. Who had the clicker last? Ashley did. Thank you. Joan, can you hit the lights,
Yes.
please? Okay, just to clarify process, this is the budget workshop, not the tentative budget, but Brittany made such a nice cover sheet I wanted to use. This is the budget workshop. Feedback from today's session will help Patty and I finalize the tentative budget, which will be delivered to the board on November 5th in a printed, bound, version like this that you're used to. At that time, on November 5th, you guys can review it, make any changes that you'd like via resolution. On the 19th, we have the budget hearing, and you can approve the budget on the 19th, or you can hear feedback from the public, hear feedback from each other on the 19th, and then approve the budget on December 5th. So once, this is not the tentative budget, but once the tentative budget comes out on November 5th, from there, you guys are in control. Any changes have to be done by resolution. So that's our budget process, and we'll get right into it. So in 2015, the board established 4 fiscal targets that we've done a pretty good job at maintaining over those years. Maintain a 10% fund balance. This used to be $11 million, but our budget has gone up and the hospital's budget has gone up, so 10% now represents $13 million. So that was one of the fiscal targets, and we're easily able to continue with that. We've got enough money in the bank, and so does the hospital. Maintain the county's A+ credit rating. There's no reason that should change based on this year's spending plan. Maintain current county service levels. There's no proposed major cuts or anything crazy in this budget. And then reduce fund balance usage to $500,000 by 2021. We will talk more about that when we get to it. That's a fiscal target that we may want to think about updating based on new information that we have. It doesn't really hold up as well from 2015. Basically, the thought was to stop using fund balance by the time the Maple Ridge pilot went away. Well, we extended the Maple Ridge pilot, so we can think a little bit more critically about fund balance use and not have such a hard target, so to speak. Okay, here's where we currently stand with our fund balances. The general fund's at $8.8 million, so if you think about us running about a $50 million budget, 10% is $5 million. So we're clearly over the 10% target that you guys want to maintain. Same is true for all of our funds. There, you know, solid waste runs about a $1.6 million, $2 million annual budget. 800,000 fund balance is more than adequate. It's safe. So we're still doing okay in all of our savings accounts. We just added to the capital account, if you recall, last month. We moved some money into that, so we're doing well here. Here is the budget summary as it stands right now. Okay, so the plan is, as you can see, county tax rate last year 7.487, proposed this year 7.487. So what we're presenting is a 0% tax increase. Okay, so last year we did the same thing. We presented you guys a zero budget and then gave you some options at the end about how maybe you might want to think about what you could do with some additional tax revenue. One thing that really helped us out this year in the budget is our, I just want to show you this real quick, full taxable value. This is a nice jump. So we went in 1 year from $2.1 billion, that's everyone's property, the whole county, what it's valued at, to $2.27 billion. So that's a nice jump. When that happens, we don't increase the tax rate, but if someone puts a new roof on or puts an addition or a garage, their property's worth more. So we're not increasing the tax rate, but could someone get an increased tax bill? Yes, but that's because their property's worth more now.
So in other
than it
words,
was
then
a year
there's a
ago.
lot of property in the county that was reappraised and, or reassessed.
Actually, it wasn't. We didn't have that much reassessment. No. This is more improved property that was improved. Well, yes, reassessed because it was improved, but we didn't have big towns doing a whole, you know, town-wide assessment reevaluation.
New construction.
Right. Yes, new construction. Yeah. Yeah. Good point. So that's important to point out. The other thing that's important to point out is our total revenue, up 6%. We'll get into that a little bit. That's non-property tax revenue that we're talking about. A lot of that is just revenue from our departments. Patty's department with the mortgage tax fees and some other things have just done really well. Our sales tax continues to do really well. So we're able to balance the budget with our internal revenue without having to, you know, put it on the property taxes, so to speak. So that's a good thing, but it's also something we want to talk a little bit more about in the presentation, because there is a risk balancing your budget based on revenues that are not as solid as property tax. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Of course, you know, the first thing always to point out when we start talking about the county budget is that we don't have all the flexibility that people sometimes think we have. If our total levy this year is $17,037,000, $13,474,000 of that is mandated by the state of New York. So that's pretty consistent with most counties. We typically say mandates make up about 80% of the budget. Last year it was 81%, I think. This year it's 79%, so it varies, but that's pretty well on target with everyone else. Like I said, our full taxable value, this is, you know, every property in the county. This is what helps us stabilize the tax rate. You know, when property, you know, people improve their properties, new construction, it helps us stabilize the tax rate throughout the county. Property tax levy, this is the history of what we've raised by property taxes, what we put onto the public to pay in their property taxes. This is just a 10-year look back. 10 years ago, we were at about $12.5 million. Today, we're at 17. So it's about a click of 2%, a little bit more than 2% a year that we've clicked along for the last 10 years. And you know, inflation goes up. When we our union contracts, it's not unexpected that we, you know, would kind of click up, you know, as we go on. Health insurance, yeah. So speaking of the rate, here's the rate per $1,000 of assessed value. So if you have a $100,000 house, last year you paid $749. This year, if your house is still worth $100,000, you're paying $749 again to the county. And actually, this goes back to 2010, but if you take it back to 2008, 2007, our rate was much higher. It was into the almost $8 per thousand. So we've held pretty good, you know, over the last 10 years, but actually historically we're doing even better at 7.5 because we were up to 8 at one point. So. Sales tax collection, this is one of the things that, we've continued to just do well with. The internet sales tax has helped us this year. Even though if you saw my email, we gave away $184,000 of that internet sales tax to the towns, the state, for the AIM reimbursement program. So that was money that the state used to pay that we paid. Even with that, I think our internet sales tax has helped us. I mean, the economy's good, but I think that has been one factor that's been good for us this year. 2 years ago, we budgeted a little less than $11 million for sales tax. We received, over 12.5. So that was a year, although we had the IGT that year, if you remember, so we didn't really get to feel that we had such a great gap, but we did really well. And so, in my opinion, it's better to budget more accurately and not pin it on the taxpayers than be pleasantly surprised at the end of the year, oh, we've got $2 million to spend. I'd rather count on the $2 million and not put it on the tax base. If we need $2 million extra, well, we can figure it out in the next year's budget, but having extra to play with at the end of the year, I don't think is necessarily the right way to go. So we're being a little less conservative with our sales tax, bumping that up to $11,850,000, but that is still a conservative number because we've received $11.8 million for the last 4 years in a row. So we're still not pushing the envelope where we might not. I never want to be the county that didn't reach our sales tax goals. You read about it all the time in the paper. Cities and counties that don't reach their sales tax goals and now they're short for the year and what are we going to do? We got to take it out of our fund balance. I don't ever want that to be us. So this year we're bumping it up from 11.5 to 11.850, which, like I said, is still conservative. It just probably won't give us that huge gap that we got used to for a few years here, where we really had a lot at the end. During those years, you might have had more at the end to play with, but you also put more up front on your property taxes, because you weren't counting on that revenue.
You don't wanna push that too far though, Ryan.
I agree. So, we are still budgeting sales tax conservatively. However, we should keep in mind, one, we never want to be, see our sales tax budgets fall short. Like I said, we don't want to be, in the paper, the county that was not conservative enough. 2, sales tax is volatile response to macroeconomic conditions. It's not in our control. We can't control sales tax. It's based on the economy of New York State and the region and the country. So it's not something that you want to bank on every year to balance your budget. And then the other thing is if you do count too much on sales tax and your sales tax dips, then usually that means it's a bad year, it's a recession. And then in a recession, you're double whacking your constituents because we got to raise their property taxes in the middle of a recession. So like I said, I think we're still being conservative. I don't think we're pushing the envelope at all, but just something to keep in mind that as we push this sales tax number up, it's not something that we want to really depend on as a consistent source. So that's just a side note. I still think, and Patty would agree, that we're being conservative, but it's not something we want to push year after year after year and then a crash and now we're in trouble. So
Yeah, you're gonna have to have a top out for you somewhere. 11.8 might be your top.
yeah, so I was thinking 12, and hold it for a couple years and see where, if we get 12.7 this year, and I mean, next year we've got, windmill projects under construction. Even though those projects are sales tax exempt, we always do better when we have windmill construction because we got all those trucks getting gas and all those people eating lunch, and so it wouldn't surprise me if we're doing 11.8 next year. It wouldn't surprise me if we hit 12.8 because we've got extra things happening in the county. But again, you don't want to balance your budget based on that.
You take a dip in a hurry.
Right, exactly. General assumptions. Insurance premiums will not increase in 2020. I'm going to show you a chart on that in a second and show why we feel that we should hold steady on that. Management exempt employees will receive a 2% raise. This is consistent to what we've done every year. We've budgeted for 2% across the board, and then for the management salaries we've done different things. which we never actually settled, but for the budget exactly, we're planning on 2% across the board.
Is that what the?
Yeah. CSEA, yes. The other, the road patrol and, they're at 2, well, the road patrol doesn't have a contract, but the corrections are at 2.5. So, this goes back to our target of reducing, general fund use. Again, with the IGT payments, rather than whack the taxpayers with that extra amount that we've been paying, we've been taking out of fund balance because the state adjusts their IGT payments to us on a lagging schedule. So if we use fund balance this year and then it's consistently high, well then we can, put it on the levy and make, make the taxpayers pay for it. But with it changing so much, I think it's better to, what we've done the last couple of years is just pay for it out of pocket, then wait to see what the, what the lag is. And rather than charging everybody up front for something that we aren't sure about, I think it's better to take it out of our savings account and then catch up if we need to.
Is that 3.5 million our share?
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought that was different, okay.
So if they get 3.5 from us, then they're getting 7 total.
Yeah, and I thought we were told at the hospital that went down, so. Must be now.
They were planning on it going down, and then,
Okay.
see, this is the thing.
Yeah.
We don't want to budget with this we don't want to put the whole thing on the tax levy because it changes so much. So you're gonna, if we put $3.5 million of change onto our levy, I mean, that's crazy. So now you're gonna have a, 1 year with your tax rate at 10 and then the next at, back down to 7. So why not just ride it out the storm with our savings account?
But we already have some invested, 2.8, that's already budgeted.
Right, yes.
We're just making up
The difference, yes, you're absolutely right, Jerry, yep. I'm not saying the full 3 million, but the difference that has come in over the last few years, we've kind of ridden the wave. And then at excess sales tax, so we will come in good this year, our departments did well, we're gonna have budget surplus this year, and we're gonna have excess sales tax. We'll use that money to fund, as we have in the past, capital data processing, buildings and grounds, those types of accounts that constantly need to be replenished. We'll do that like we do most years using the excess sales tax. So again, rather than putting it on the taxpayers in 2020, we'll use our surplus from 2019 to even things out. Okay, this is our health insurance fund balance. If you go back to the first quarter of 2017, this is when everybody was panicking a little because things were rough, and our fund balance was at $1.1 million, which is a little scary. It's not actuarially that far off from what they would recommend, but for us, having so many employees, it's something that it was a little bit frightening. So the Board of Legislators made some policy changes, and as you can see, over a short period of time, we've got that fund balance up to where we want it. It's at $4.9 million. We didn't really want to go above 4, but when you accumulate 10% on 10% on 10% on 10%, it shoots up a little faster than you think. So my recommendation is that we don't do any insurance increases, premium increases this year, because we don't want this number to continue to climb. When we put taxpayer dollars into this fund, we can't use them for anything else. And so if the claims aren't going to come out at at the rate that the money's coming in, then we've just got money sitting there that we charge the taxpayers for that we can't use. So I would recommend that we, obviously we keep an eye on it, and if we have to do something mid-year, we can. But I wouldn't budget for, to go up any further than where we're at right now, personally. So, and then we'll get into the, department by department breakdown. Any questions on what we've gone over so far?
With the, in terms of the health insurance fund, right?
Yeah.
If it ever kept growing to the point we got up to $6 million,
Yeah.
what are the chances of reducing the premiums to bring that back down to a level
That'd be your only choice.
that's the only choice you have, right?
Well, or find a way to spend it.
Yeah.
There's lots of creative ways. Like giving a premium holiday where we as employer and the employee doesn't have to pay.
Right. That's
Once every 6 months, there's a holiday where you get a paycheck without. So that might be better than actually reducing rates.
Right.
Because reducing rates, then it becomes an expectation. Now we're going
Right.
backwards. eventually.
Last time I
Okay.
did it didn't work too good.
No.
Well, let's be real, eventually claims will catch up. You know, if we stay at 0 and claims grow at 5-6%, which they have, then they're gonna catch up and knock that fund balance back down. But right now, we don't wanna keep climbing that thing, there's no need to. There's no need. Any other questions? Okay. Public safety, district attorney's office. So we talked about this before, I think last month we talked about them putting in a traffic diversion program that would increase their revenue $15,000. So basically traffic tickets would be processed through an online system. It's gonna save them time, and it's also gonna give them revenue upstairs. So that's something that they're looking to implement in 2020. Frankly, we think 15 is pretty conservative. It could be higher. There's 200 tickets a month at $20 a ticket times 12 months. I mean, we kind of knocked it down because we weren't sure, you know, what if they don't get it off the ground until March? Now you've only got 9 months, and what if it's not as popular as we think? So we're trying to be conservative. Phone increase, since we now have the totally paperless system that we put in last few months ago. You guys voted for the discovery reform. Remember the sheriff's department got a bunch of scanners, the DA got a bunch of scanners and a couple computers. We need to add now phones and hotspots so they can have their paperless system with them when they go out to the different courts. And since we now have not one ADA but 2, that's 2. So that's the 2,500 for phones and hotspots. Coroner will stay exactly the same, no changes to that. The request we did talk about last month, the only one that we funded was the upgrade from ADA from part-time to full-time. The other 2 were not funded in the budget. So they were requested, but we beat them back and chose not to go that way this time. Just your attorney total, last year, $488,000. Now remember, when we go through these balances, this is not the department's total budget, this is the cost on the levy. So this is expenses minus revenue, what we're charging the taxpayers. Expenses minus revenue last year was $488,000, this year is $588, so 20% increase, but that's basically that one position, and that's it. So that's, and normal, everything else that goes up, their wages and everything else, but nothing crazy out of that. Coroner, like I said, stays exactly the same. Apparently went up by $8, or down, I guess, down. Public defender, this is a contracted service with Lewis Defenders, so this is not something that we have oversight over directly. So no change. This is a 5-year contract we signed with them. We already know what the costs are going to be. Same as last year, $404,200. But later this year, like we just did today, you guys are going to be appropriating additional grant funds over to them. Now, it's not on our levy, it doesn't go to the taxpayers, but that's extra money that's coming into that department from the state. Mike Young talked about it last month at the committee meetings up here. Oops. Sheriff's Office, okay, personnel highlights. So personnel up 5%, it's $155,000 more. This is road patrol and dispatch, okay, this is not jail. Union increase pending negotiations, so that's something that we secretly budget for. Utilization of part-time employees. So here's something that the sheriff and I talked about and we agree upon, both the sheriff and I agree, that one thing that would help their overtime is we have given them part-time employees, we have not fully funded those positions. So for example, we say, yes, you have someone that's available for 20 hours a pay period. But in reality, in the budget, we only put in 10 or less because they haven't been able to get people to work that full 20 hours of pay period. So we kind of tried to budget to reflect what we thought was real, and they're saying, well, we can't make it real if we don't have the money there to do it. So this is what our solution is. Fully fund 4 part-time dispatchers, fully fund part-time road patrol. That means 20 hours per pay period the whole year round, okay? That is $16,000 each for a dispatcher, $19,000 each for a road patrol. Total cost is right there, which is pretty darn close to your 155. So, there was a request for 2 additional road patrol deputies, we did not honor that request, that was not added in the budget. So, this is our compromise solution to some of the differences that we had, earlier this year, is rather than using overtime, try to give them really all the resources they could need to be successful with part-timers and kind of pull that lever that the Bonadio report is suggesting that we do, and see if that will help us, so. Questions, feedback on that?
What about the SRO position?
Yep, I'll get to that in a minute. Yep.
The ones that aren't, like this one here,
Yeah.
not included in the budget. When we
Yes.
have the next meeting, are those department heads going to be here to be able to communicate their desires? Or is that already been done?
This is my 3rd budget, department heads haven't argued, really. I mean, I think they've accepted the tentative budget as fair, you know, that them and I have worked out. However, we also know that the sheriff disputed the budget later in the year.
Yep.
So, you know, I don't know.
Don't know.
They're more than welcome to speak up now or anytime between now and when the
Okay,
budget
yeah,
is
that's what I
announced.
wanted.
The sheriff and I agree on this. I mean, this shouldn't be controversial. We can't, you know, this is not, it shouldn't be controversial between us. You guys might have a different take, but between the sheriff and I, really, this should be, something that we both have compromised on.
Okay.
So, but you guys, you know, you have every right, since this has been an issue, to weigh in and have ideas on it, so.
The only issue I see with it, Brian, is what we just approved with the part-time dispatcher, you're running into trouble.
Yeah.
Keeping part-timers because they're looking for full-time
Mhm.
jobs, so I agree, and you know, I'm glad that everyone compromised about this, but I think you're still gonna run into trouble keeping your part-timers.
Yeah, we talked about that, so what I told the sheriff was, I said, you guys need to start thinking about this like the CNAs at the hospital. They're in constant recruitment mode. You don't stop recruiting just because you are filled at the moment. You know, you keep recruiting, keep getting people in the system, because you're right, our rate of, you know, these part-timers have come in and out, sometimes quite quickly.
In the issue with them, I mean, the same with the CNAs, they're putting all that time and money into their training, especially the road patrol.
Yep.
I think the corrections and dispatchers, I don't think he really pays a lot to do that, but with the road patrol, I know that that's quite expensive, if he does that, so.
Yeah, but I thought the part-timers were ones that are already qualified in
Maybe the
holding that.
road patrol.
Road patrol, yeah,
But not
because
that-
I didn't think we were training them for
Yeah,
part-time.
the road patrol might be, but the dispatchers,
Okay.
cause they gotta be cross-trained as corrections.
Yeah. I think you're right about that, Brian. I think, yeah, we're not sending part-time
patrol,
road
right.
patrols to academy. You know, we're not gonna do that, but,
In the past, they've always
But I
used,
thought a lot of these people came from other law enforcement agencies. Am I wrong in that?
I
the,
really
the
don't
road
have
patrol,
information.
yes.
Come.
So, like with rec patrol, use that for example, there was state DEC officers, different departments where they came and worked part-time.
Right.
I mean, the same thing with the sheriff worked part-time as a retired, city of Rochester, police officer at the time, but dispatchers, like I said, are cross-trained as correction officers. So, unless they're getting a full-time dispatcher from Jefferson County or Oneida County to come up and work part-time here, in there lies a problem too, because chances are they aren't cross-trained. Jefferson County isn't,
Yeah, right.
because their dispatch center is not in the jail, whereas ours is.
There's only a few that are.
Right.
So, the other thing that I talked to the sheriff about was, you know, we're saying 4 fully funded part-time positions, and 4, you know, dispatchers, 4 road patrol. Do we really care if it's 4 or 15? As long as they're within that budget, I don't care if it's a new position of part-time, you know, use as many part-timers as you need. So, you know, part of that is maybe they might come to us this year and say, you're right, we're having a hard time keeping these 4 positions, but if we had 6, then we can get them on a better rotation, and one guy only wants to work 5 hours a week, great, whatever, you know.
But would
Just-
they stay? I mean, is the big problem is being the part-time, and they're only even if they got the full 20 hours, is that enough?
That's the question. Typically, we've had some pretty good part-timers that have stayed with us for a while.
Yeah.
But usually it's a stepping stone, right? You know, if you wanna get into law enforcement, taking a part-time gig's a good way to do it, so.
Well, it's a start, I
Yeah.
can definitely support it.
And we're getting, you know, if you're using part-timers, you're getting 2 for 1 from overtime, you know, and there's no benefits either, so,
That's the big thing.
yeah.
That would, if you had some benefits, I know it might help you. But that's expensive.
So, here's your SRO, this is the recreation patrol, as we talked about earlier this year, the SRO off-season, the 2 SRO, they're gonna be budgeted, for their time out of recreation. So they're not gonna have their, basically take a budget transfer for them to work, road patrol, yeah, they're budgeted under recreation for those months that they're not in the schools.
And you and the sheriff are lockstep in agreement of that?
No comment.
Just thought I'd ask.
Increased vehicle repair, so over the last few years, we've added boats and jet skis and snowmobiles and ATVs, and they've run over that line pretty consistently. Some of the equipment's getting older, so they wanted to bump up their recreation patrol, vehicle repair line up a little bit, which I can understand. Planning on maximum reimbursement from state recreation programs, same as we do every year. We really wanna, you know, get maximum out of the snowmobile, as much as we can out of the naval reimbursement. And then, like last year, the last couple of years, the ATV fund, where you pay your permits in, will pay over to the sheriff's department for some of that ATV patrol. We've done that out of the trail fund, so that number stays the same. Non-jail, so this is road patrol, dispatch, recreation, all non-jail. $3 million last year, they requested about 3.4, we knocked it down to 3.2. I mean, I think we did well by them, and I think we're in agreement with a plan for next year, so hopefully that'll go over well. So, any other questions on road patrol before we get into jail? Okay. Jail, similar situation here. So the first thing I want to talk about though is the boarding revenue. We just haven't had inmates in. So we've either been full ourselves or other places haven't needed us. So we have not hit that $65,000 revenue mark in a few years. So it's just not realistic to expect you're going to get that. So we bumped that down to 35, which is a little more realistic. Personnel services. Again, similar situation as the road patrol, we bumped that up by a little bit because we've got the increase for the COs by union contract. Same thing with the other. We're gonna fully fund those part-time COs, so about 18.5 a piece. We have 6 of them. If we fully fund 20 hours of pay period, then that's the difference there, $111,000. Overtime, we did bump up as well because they've used, I mean, it doesn't matter what we budgeted, they've used at least $50,000 of overtime every single year. So budgeting short of that is just setting them up for failure, and we don't want to do that. So it's not that we're giving them more money because they've used it anyway, right? So it's not like it's costing us more to budget for over $50,000 for overtime because they've used that much anyway. So, you know, but they're this year going to use over $120,000 for overtime. So hopefully some of this will take down some of what they're using on the overtime side, basically. Fringe, just due to attrition, you're going to see this a lot. This is a good theme throughout the budget. We've had people retire. We've had people take our new health insurance plans. It's cheaper, so that saved us quite a bit on the jail side as well. So jail total, 2.2 last year, 2.47 they requested. We bumped them down a little bit, so they're at 2.42 for next year. And again, similar situation. The sheriff and I agree on this. I mean, he might say, well, I still think that I need the full amount, but we're on the same page, you know, in terms of what's required. So. Probation, this one's easy. The no bail law. We don't know how that's going to impact us. We don't do an ankle monitoring program right now. We might have to because the quote-unquote law says least restrictive. and a judge could order electronic monitoring. So we put in $5,000 that we don't normally have for electronic monitoring. I personally don't think it's gonna come up, but if it does, we're prepared. Probation total, 434 to 451, change of 5.8%. That's mostly, that is all due to personnel. People taking health insurance programs and changing, it's all changes in health insurance actually. So sometimes we save a little, sometimes it costs us a little. Emergency management, increased emergency management assistant from 35 to 40 hours. That is included in the budget. That's something that Bob has asked for every budget that I've done so far. So we got that in, which is only fair because Jen's probably working more than 40 hours anyway. Other request was to upgrade the position completely from emergency management assistant to deputy director. That funding, request was not put in the budget. But if that's something you guys want to weigh in on and change, you can do that. But I thought the increase in hours was a good step in the right direction. So. Total budget for emergency management, 152 to 162, 6.8%. That's mostly just due to the hour increase that we gave. Codes department, increased revenue 15,000. This is another one of those scenarios where we've just done well. Our revenue has done well. We've exceeded targets for the last few years, so it's safe to bump those up a little bit. So we're bumping up their revenue 15,000. Personnel is going down $12,318. We've had a retirement up there, and we've had attrition. Second year in a row for codes with a budget reduction, so they're trending in a direction that we like. So 239 last year, 211 this year. They're down about 11% for the year. So, and again, that's simply due to replacing a veteran employee with a new employee. Health and Human Services. Any questions about anything on the public safety end of things? Okay. Community services, professional services decreases 34.5 to 27. So the big expense that is local, that comes from the taxpayers, our taxpayers, in Pat's department is when we have to do psychological evaluations, court-ordered evaluations. When we have to do those, it costs us a little bit of money. We're going through a new service this year that doesn't require a psychiatrist, so we're trying a new method that should be a little cheaper. So that's the change there. As you guys saw today, you saw the list of appropriations. That stuff doesn't change a whole lot. It's pretty much the same. That list can be made available to you guys upon request, but it's pretty much the same numbers that we've seen the last few years. They adjust slightly here based on grants and things, but we're pretty well the same upon that. For Pat's office, 130 to 115, minus 11%. Again, that's mostly just due to the change in our evaluation procedure. Public health, loss of DSRIP. This is what we've been counting on for the last, as soon as the program started, we knew it was going to end in 2020. So that revenue is down $100,000, but we knew that last year. We had the grant to cover the gap last year, the $100,000, but we're losing that this year. The pre-K program rate increase, again, we talked about this. We actually made that increase in July of this year. Am I right on that, Ashley?
Yeah.
Yeah. So last year we only had to account for a half a year of rate increase. This year we have to account for the full year of rate increase. So that's $54,000 increase to the budget. Personnel costs have decreased $52,000 to attrition. We've had how many retirements, Ashley? 4. 4, I think. So again, you replace a 30-year employee with a new employee. It's just cheaper. So public health total is up a little bit more than we'd like, but that's really things outside their control. The pre-K program is state mandated, and the DSRIP program was state mandated. So it is what it is. 1.2 last year, 1.3 this year, so up about almost exactly $100,000 year over year. DSS highlights, personnel costs are down 1.6%, decreasing $76,000 total, so larger department, larger impact, but same story. Retirements. Jenny, how many retirements do you guys have? 6?
Yeah. 5 6 this year.
6 this year.
6 this year.
So, something worth noting, I went back to 2016 and looked at the Schedule 5 to see where DSS was in 2016. Since 2016, we're down 7.5 positions total from that time. So, I think we're doing pretty good with that workforce. Foster care is decreased $210,000 due to changes in current population. So, without getting into too much detail, we have a younger group that's in foster care right now, and less, I don't want to say needy, but they're residential placements, they're not institution placements. So we had an individual that was in an expensive placement for quite a few years. That person has moved on. So that is a savings of $210,000. Safety net, we're increasing $50,000. We're just spending it. I mean, that's the program where people come in and look for temporary shelter from us. We're putting them in motels or our shelter. We spend about, what'd you say, Jenny, $35,000 a month, I think was our number. So
For safety net.
yeah, for safety net, we've just been spending it. So, you know, I think last year they requested it to come up, and I told them no. And this year we're probably going to exceed 350. So, you know, that's safe to bump it up. Emergency housing, again, this is similar. This is all part of the whole safety net situation, but our rate is increasing as well because the Opportunities Shelter on Diane Street, they have hired a shelter manager, which they needed to. They were having some things going on where they need additional level of supervision. That means our cost for putting someone there is increased, so that increased our budget as well. Medicaid, $5 million, IGT 3.75 are the same. So we're not planning any increases for that. Medicaid's capped anyways. The state, you know, they could change that in their budget next year, but it'd be silly for us to plan for that without knowing for sure what they're going to do. Same with IGT. No requests out of DSS this year. So total budget, $10.7 million last year to $10.3 million this year, a change of 3.2%. So good job by DSS this year to trend us in the right direction. Office for the Aging, decrease in salary because we eliminated that one position, but we put it right back into the nutrition contract. We just did that a couple months ago. Our fringe benefits are up. We've had a couple employees take our insurance plan that didn't have it before, so that affects the budget. And then total grant funding has gone up. We have 3 levels of grants. We have federal, state, and local? What's the third one? Oh, maybe just federal and state.
Oh, no, that was the, unmet needs funding.
Oh, yes, the unmet needs, yeah.
Which
yeah.
has no match to the county.
Right. So that's our increase in grant funding. That actually is state money, $25,000 the state has increased. Request was to increase the part-time account clerk to full-time. We did not fund that in the current budget. That's been a request that's come out a couple years in a row, but I think they get along just fine. Kelly disagrees, but we agree to disagree on that one. So. Office for the Aging total, last year 331, this year 382. They're up 15%. That's solely due to those 2 employees taking the health insurance plan. So, and there's nickels and dimes here and there, but most of it is from health insurance. Questions about Health and Human Services? Anything we've gone over so far? How are we doing on time? Good. Great. Public Services, County Clerk. Personnel decreased by 1975 due to attrition. We've got 2 retirements at the County Clerk's office this year. Professional Services, we got the new IQS system that we put in this year, so we've got to manage that system all next year, and you've got the contracts that go along with all that. DMV lease increase by changing locations. That'll cost us $1,800 for the whole year. Revenue, we're holding the same. They've been pretty consistent, but nothing that really needs to go up or down dramatically. So we've held that pretty well the same. County clerk, so we talked about this last month. County clerk to take on the ATV permitting process downstairs. So there's no cost to that, but it is a highlight that I wanted to mention. No request from the county clerk specifically. The county clerk's office is a money maker, so they don't go on the levy, they take money off the levy, right? Because they bring in more money than they cost us. So last year, net expenses, and then minus revenue, they brought in $119,000. This year, net, we're thinking they're gonna bring in $137,000. So a net increase of $14,000. Highway Department, no operational changes, just wage and fringe increases. However, big change of the way we're budgeting for the Highway Department this year. We're increasing the levy contribution by $160,000. Okay, so if you look in your budget, you have a line that says that was inter-county roads. Okay, at the end of that, what's left over goes on the levy. We are increasing that by $160,000, and here's why. What we're doing right now is unsustainable. Okay, we have not changed the levy for county road in like 6 years. Furthermore, we haven't changed what the machinery fund charges the county road fund in even more years than that. So the machinery fund hosts the machinery that the road fund leases the machinery from. Okay, remember like 6 months ago we replenished that fund because it ran out? So rather than playing this game where we put a whole bunch of money into it and then replenish it every 5 years when it draws down, why don't we just charge ourselves the amount that it actually costs to run the department? Okay, so our goal this year is to catch up, charge the funds appropriately. Okay, so charge machinery fund $112,000, which is actually what it's costing. Okay, and then we shouldn't have to mid-year, 5 years from now, dip into our bank accounts to cover the shortage. So it's just a different way of looking at it. This should be totally self-sustaining. So next year, we should see a small increase to the road levy instead of no increase for another 10 years. So we kind of just try to keep it consistent with time. Patty, this is complicated. I never explained it well, but does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense to me.
Does it make sense to you guys? Do you guys understand where we're coming from? The other thing we've been doing is we use the county road fund balance every year. So every year we use the fund balance of the road to balance the budget. And then what happens? 5, 10 years later, it's all the way eroded down to nothing, and we got to put a big bucket load of money. Well, let's not do that. Let's just budget appropriately for what's going to cost us to run the department this year and keep our fund balance in the green. So we're not going to use fund balance. We're not going to use fund balance for the machinery fund. And this should be a more sustainable approach, but it is a big chunk this year. It's $160,000 on the levy. That's a lot, but I think it's the right thing to do and puts us in a better position going forward. Let's see, $50,000 in overtime is not funded. Warren wanted additional overtime, and we said nope. And upgrade of 2 positions, we also said no. Questions about highway?
How's the 50,000 in overtime related to this year?
They haven't gone over budget this year. They were fine. They just, Warren was saying there's more they could do, which is true, but.
They did though, Ryan, didn't they? 'Cause
What's that?
from insurance, we put 40-some thousand in to keep the part-timers.
That was for the part-timers, not for overtime.
Well, they were drawing overtime too. They depleted their funds, cause they should have been there till September if they hadn't worked extra.
Patty, can you comment on that?
Am I wrong?
There was something that, you're right, but I don't know if it relates to.
Well, no, there wasn't enough, they had depleted their normal budget line item for the part-timers. He
Right.
wanted to extend the part-timers, so we had to transfer money from
Cause they
either
spent
an
more.
overtime fund or someplace over onto the part-time
We-
line item, so there was
Cause they had
enough
already
money.
spent the full
Well,
yearly budget.
he wanted to extend their
Yeah.
employment past the date though,
I think Brian's right, and we
Yeah.
used the insurance recovery money to
But
put
they
it in
were,
a
they
personnel.
were leaving.
I think he
One-
had also 2 additional temporary helpers in the
Yeah,
temporary
yes.
line because they weren't full-time. He was
Okay.
waiting, he
Right.
had 2 full-time people
Because
get
they-
done,
Yeah.
so they were paying him out of the temporary help, so.
That's right, Patty.
Yeah, he did backfill 2, so they hired 2 more.
We hired 2 more summer people as like an audition for, like we always do, whenever we have an opening. We just happen to have 2 at a time this year. So, but anyways, I don't think they need $50,000 more of overtime. If they happen to get to that stage, we can work with them at that time, but. Okay, so highway department capital equipment, you guys approved the, loan for this one today. So that one's coming out of the books next year. I mean, it's coming out of the books this year, but we have to account for it for 5 years. So basically, we are pretty well stacked up for a year on our equipment leases, right? Because we only have $200,000 to spend, and we've got 181 tied up in leases. However, we had an unexpected equipment failure that we have to account for. $77,000 for a new lowboy trailer. We did not account for that. It was not in their 5-year capital plan, but it has failed to the point where it needs to be replaced. So it's not safely going over railroad ties and such. I mean, it is right now, but it needs to be replaced soon. So our plan is to use the 2019 budget surplus, so basically contingency this year, since we haven't really touched it, to pay for that trailer that they need, because they don't have the excess money for it next year, and they're $200,000. They already have 181 tied up. So if you needed 177 more, you don't have it. So,
What year is that logo?
oh boy.
You know?
Yeah. Right.
And what's wrong?
The supports that help it bow up.
The lip part of it?
This is way outside my expertise.
Okay.
But this part
Yeah,
is
the
now
gooseneck,
gone
the
this way.
gooseneck,
Yes.
where it lifts it up in the air.
Not the gooseneck. So on the trailer itself,
Main
it's
beams.
the main
The main
beams.
beams,
Paper?
Yup,
keep it
the
up.
arch, yeah.
Yeah, it is flat to sagging, and we welded it 5 times already. But I can give you the exact.
No, that's okay, that's fine.
Well, I got it right in front of me, so. It's a 2001 50-ton low bed trailer. Our low bed trailer has lost the arch of the main beams. It is 18 years old. The main beams have straightened it out when moving equipment. It scrubs on high points and roadways.
You call it actually, that's not right.
So that, we will be coming to you at the end of this year to use some contingency to cover that cost, because we couldn't put it in for the 2020 plan, so already tapped out. Highway Department capital projects, here's where we will be working next year. West Road Culvert number 1, that's a Culvert New York program, so that's not all of us. The state helps us with that cost. Bridges, in-house, our crew always does one bridge a year. Davis Road Bridge, which is now by Lions Falls, that'll be done in-house, and then we hire, usually a big firm to do a big bridge New York project for us. That's where the state pays, 90%, the feds pay 5%, and we pay 5%. And then our CHIPS program, our CHIPS money is the same as last year. The state did restore the severe winter weather funding, so that's back. So we will be reprofiling Osceola Road. We did 6 miles last year. We'll do 6 miles this year. Reprofiling number 4 road. That is the last 2 miles of number 4 road. We will be done finally with number 4 road.
And then you get signed
No, that was Liberty Road.
Oh,
That was
sorry.
Yeah, then we can start right back at the beginning. Hot Mix will be working on Creek Road, which is in the town of Pinckney. It's actually right on the Pinckney-Denmark border over that direction. And then Cold Mix, to be determined. They're not quite sure where they want to go yet for the Cold Mix. So, questions on this? Okay, Highway Department total, like I said, we really bumped up the, we bumped up their levy, so their levy's up 4.2% to almost $4 million for next year. Solid Waste Fund, I never did get an answer on Kip to remind me why we did this, but our revenue is staying roughly the same, we're just moving around where it's coming from. Dank recycling reimbursement, we're planning on that staying the same, even though we'll be sending our recycling up to them. Does not include capital upgrades we have been discussing, so we'll get to that in a minute. Current fund balance is $862,000, we talked about. So what it ends up looking like is you start with $862, you plan to bring in $1.9 million, you plan to spend $1.9 million, you end with $862. That's how we always balance our enterprise funds. However, I put in this little thing here because even though this is our plan right now, we know that we're likely going to be spending more, And then at the end of the year, our fund balance is not gonna be 862, because we've been talking about doing upgrades down at the solid waste. Questions on solid waste?
That's the enterprise fund though, right?
Yes, enterprise, yeah.
When's Dank's facility up at Harrisville supposed to be up?
You know, they first told us September and then they told us January 1st, so, I think January 1st is still pretty aggressive.
Cause
but-
that's gonna affect his budget somehow.
Well, yeah, we should save,
Because
we
it
should
should
save.
save in transportation.
We should save, yeah. So his budget is not really something that we have to get 100% accurate because it's self-contained. As long as they don't way overspend compared to what comes in, we'll be fine. So it's not like it goes onto the levy, right? Economic development, some big things that we're looking at here. So we're keeping the personnel line items, so that's our share of the executive director's salary, okay? We're gonna remove all the other department line items, so that's $32,750. We're gonna add a direct contribution of $95,000, and then put a lump sum at the end, so you know how we have non-departmental, like Cornell Cooperative and Soil and Water and all those, rather than having all of those funds in the economic development department, we're gonna do it as a lump sum directly to the IDA from the county. So keep the personnel and then lump sum the rest directly to the IDA. They can do what they want with it, like a non-departmental contribution we would do for any other department. If, depending on what happens November 5th, we could even maybe wanna change this part too. But until we know, we figured we'd keep it the same. Does everyone understand what I'm saying? So total change for economic development, because we added that $95,000 of direct cash contribution, they're up quite a bit, change of about 72% for economic development. Questions, comments on that? Okay. Recreation, forestry, trails, permits revenue increased by $6,000. If you recall, last year we knocked it down quite a bit. We were trying to be a little more conservative. We met our goal, so we can go up a little bit this year. Zero budget, no impact to taxpayers on the trail side, like we've always done. You know, what comes in for permits is what goes out. Forestry and parks, we're bumping up our revenue from $54,000 to $74,000. We've hit in the 70s the last couple of years. Jackie has really picked up speed on that revenue. Plus, we're gonna have the additional full-time position that we talked about in the last meeting. So with that person tagging trees and managing our forest, we should be able to increase our forestry revenue as well. So total levy impact for the whole department, it mostly balances itself, but not completely. $24,000 of this department's operational costs go on the taxpayers of the county. The rest, they get in their own revenue from ATV permits and forestry. So last year $84,000, this year $113,000 total. This includes Jackie. So forestry and parks was $24,000 of the total $113,000. Year-over-year change of 34%. That's due to the new bringing that position from part-time to full-time that we talked about last month.
Can you go back once, that 74,762, what's Jackie been, how many years can we consistently keep cutting that every year?
I don't know. Jackie's not here, but I had that thought too, Jake. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't get maximum. I mean, eventually you got to give your forest a break, right?
Well, we're
we
gonna,
have
I don't know how many
6,000.
I don't know how many acres.
We have
own.
6,000
we got?
acres.
We have 6,000
6,000.
acres, so I mean,
Years.
I don't know how many acres she's been cutting a year. Do you know?
I don't.
Larry, do you have an idea? Has
the
she
only-
been cutting in 100 acres a year? And mind you, that 6,000 acres isn't all,
I think she's
isn't
doing
all
500
timber.
north,
Isn't
south,
all
and-
pine.
Yeah.
and
What's
100
that?
She's doing I think it's 200 on the north-south road right there where it comes out on the Bush
200
River
acres?
Road. And then around 100 is single water.
So, I mean,
But
not all the property
the
is
one on the
timber.
north-south
so-
road.
It's just a question, you know.
No, I'd be curious to know that too. I mean, you could, I mean, if you had 6,000 acres over a 6 period of time, you know, if you, over a 10-year period, you could do, if the way Jackie manages, you might be able to just keep going back to where she started. It depends how much she's cutting, so.
Could you make that upgrade on the per leader from part-time to full-time contingent upon the income from the forest lands?
I think that's what they're hoping.
Well, you'd have to fire the person if they
Or
didn't make it.
whatever, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could put
I mean,
strings
that's,
attached to it.
I mean, if you're looking at it in the economic standpoint, if the position isn't paying for itself, like
Right.
like it's sold to us, then,
Well, I'm not saying it's gonna pay for itself, obviously their levy is up 34%.
well, if it doesn't though, if it goes the other way, then
Yeah,
put
so
the position back to part-time.
So just to be clear, only part of what this new person is going to be doing is the forestry, marking, lots and keeping track of that. That's not all they're gonna be doing. We're gonna have them helping with the ATV program, we're gonna have them helping, with trails and basically a full-time help for Jackie. So it's not 100% forestation, even though we do think that having another body should help us with the revenue.
Well, that's how they sold the full-time position to us.
I think we talked about the public wanting, responding well in our JCC survey to wanting more, trails and recreation and, trying to put our money where our mouth is.
Because I think,
So,
Jerry left.
he's right.
Oh, you're because when that position was created, the management of the timberland was supposed to cover the cost of the taxes, right? And cover some of the costs of Jackie's salary, correct? Not all of them, because
Well, eventually, the county was covering
right.
whoever's before Jackie when we started.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, we wanted that to be self-funded too.
Right.
But what we were short is all was that $25,000 in taxes.
Right.
that we
So
paid other entities.
there's no way that cutting that property, Greg, every year is gonna fund the new position.
No.
That was already funding
Only part of
Jackie's
it though,
position.
you're only funding part of it. You're taking it from part-time to full-time, so it's
No,
not,
but
I'm not saying fund the total position.
No, I
Fund
understand.
the
But what I'm
25
saying, though,
grand.
the revenue from the timber, from managing the timberland is already paying for the $24,000 a year for the taxes on the property and part of Jackie's salary already. So that money is already spoken for as far as the revenue comes from the timber. See what I'm saying? So.
I'm just saying that if it doesn't come, put it back to part-time.
Well, I think we have to keep in mind that the the assessments are up, what was it, $80 million or something like that. In my mind, that's largely, related to our seasonal residences come here to snowmobile, ATV, to build houses, to increase the tax base. A lot of that is dependent upon the trail maintenance, the snowmobile grants that Jackie administers, and everything that keeps all that stuff going. So I don't agree that we can make this an enterprise fund. There's a lot that department does to support our overall economy.
Well, we'll give it a shot this year, and this forestry revenue has been fairly volatile. I mean, it's not like we've crushed it every year. Some years we only had 50,000. So we got to watch it and make sure we're managing it. And we don't want to. I want to budget conservatively enough so that the levy amount, we're not whacking the taxpayers too much all at once. That's what it's about, I think. So, okay, real property. We're going to be charging the schools and villages a little bit more because postage has increased, so our revenue's up a little bit. Personnel expense increased $11,000, again, simply due to health insurance and wage changes. No other increases for Candy's department. Everything else stays the same. Total levy amount, $373,000. And up 3.4%. Looks like we cut her a whopping $190. Board of Elections. elections, so we've got more elections. We've got the presidential primary in 2020 that we didn't have in 2019. So one more election, and then we've got the annual cost. If you recall, we put our voting machines on that 8-year payment plan, so that's hitting now where it wasn't before. I got to get these girls in front of you guys. They have been asking for adjustments with their personnel compensation, and you know, it's not something that I have funded in the last 2 budgets, but I think they are owed the opportunity to chat with you guys about it. So at some point we'll get them to talk to you, but it's currently not funded in the budget. Board elections total up 16%, but that's because we got the extra election and we got those machines, so that's as to be expected. Everything else is about the same. Veterans, this is the easiest department to budget for. We've got 1 person and not a lot of revenue coming in and out, so total change down 0.12% for veterans, so not a bad bargain, not $55 grand on your tax bill to provide that service. Weights and measures, again, this is contracted out with Jefferson County. The amount is going to be the same as it was last year, $59.9. So that you know, that doesn't change. And if you ever look for weight and measures, it's not weights and measures, it's consumer affairs. Planning, transportation and bus system remains budget neutral. I think we do a lot of resolutions for our bus system and we hear a lot about it, but it's important to recognize that that's still not going on to the local tax levy. That's still a budget neutral program. 2020 census, we will have some things that we'll have to do for 2020. We've already started doing some things for the 2020 census. All of those expenses, they're minor things, but they will come out of the community development line item. No requests out of planning this year. Their budget is held pretty much the same. Wage increases and insurance increases, that's it. So that's their budget. Administrative, any questions on anything in government services? Okay. Administrative services, IT, we got a lot going on for IT this year. We will look to replenish the capital data processing fund. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to use some of our 2019 excess budget surplus to plug some money back into that account. We've done quite a bit this year with our capital data processing. We did a new system for civil service, we did a new system for Jenny, we did a new system for the sheriff, we did a new system for the VA. Everybody's getting new software, and it's a good thing. It makes us more efficient. It's a good place to spend money. We just got to make sure we keep up on that and keep it replenished. No line item changes besides personnel, and then we've got that new position that we talked about last month. Storage area network is a $100,000 project. We're going to do it in 2 phases, 2020 and 2021. So that will be coming out of the capital account. And then the sheriff's office is putting a new civil software system in. That's $5,000 for next year. Total budget up, but like I said, largely due to that additional position that we added. Buildings and grounds. State reimbursement. We did well this year with our state reimbursement on the courthouse. We take care of the cleaning and all that, and the state pays us back. We were able to increase our reimbursement on that. Personnel down 18%. I mean, that's a department where we've had 3 positions turn over in the last year. So again, you just have cheaper, younger people coming in. Savings from the solar project, we're keeping that at $60,000. We have not hit the big numbers that were predicted, but we're ironing out whether it's a billing issue or whether it's a rate issue. We're still working on that, but year over year, it's been about $60,000 of savings. We were supposed to get 125, 130. So it's nothing that we've done wrong. It's just the either they're not honoring the rate or the energy rates have been down significantly in the last. You guys signed the deal on that 4 years ago. Energy prices are down. So.
was our rate?
It wasn't locked in.
It wasn't locked in,
Okay.
so it's based over a percentage over the going rate.
Right.
Okay, so
So then we just have
that would make sense.
Is that 60 our piece and then there's
That's
another
our
piece
piece.
that's hospital?
That's our piece, right?
Yeah, that's our piece. Yeah.
So we put those 2 together. So was our piece just
No, our piece was
125?
supposed to be the 125.
again, we wanna replenish, so last year, we put taxes up to gain another $300,000, you remember that? We wanted to put it towards future capital projects. Well, I'm recommending that we do the same thing next year, not increase taxes, but take that same $300,000, roll it over again, but I'm recommending that we take $100,000 and put it right in buildings and grounds capital. So this year, we put the whole thing in a new account for new buildings. I would recommend that we do $200,000 to do the same thing we did this year, let you guys appropriate it as you want to, like we did this year. But $100,000, we do need to replenish capital buildings and grounds. And, you know, that's what this money was supposed to be for, is to allow us to do some projects. So that's what I'm recommending we do with that. You'll still have $200,000 at the end to work with. Buildings and grounds, capital projects. So we've got the repointing of the courthouse and the PSB. That was a rebid from last year. We're gonna carry that over and do that again. We've increased the budget on that because we added the PSB. So that's up a little bit. Sheriff's Office impound yard. This is something that, from what I understand, they've been asking for a long time. They got me all the information, fencing, what they need, gate costs. They did 3 quotes on everything, and I would recommend for $18,000 we go ahead and give them that. They've right now they just put the vehicles under a tarp, and it's not really the best situation. Jerry?
Why don't we do the $500,000 worth of drainage that goes with the PSB?
We can do that. I mean, it would.
I mean, you're
you'd
gonna
have
put
to
an
take.
impound yard and the water's still standing. You're gonna have to go in and dig that whole side up, whether we build the building or not, to fix it right.
Yeah, I mean, we can, what we need to do, I mean, that's why we kinda need to have more of a direction and a vision from the board on what these big capital projects, I mean, what you guys wanna see. 18,000, we can do that tomorrow, we can, you know, that is not a big project, that doesn't, you know, affect our budget one way or another. But the big things, like that, or like you mentioned earlier, Jerry, the PSB boiler and HVAC, you know, those are things where we need direction from the board about, you know, which projects you guys value and which ones you wanna do. I mean, we're kinda just, you know, we just plugged in ourselves. I mean, Matt and I plugged in highway siding window replacement. I mean, how much longer can we go with windows from 1919 in the highway garage? So that was just one that we, you know, picked, but if you guys have more direction and you know, have a vision of where you wanna go, let us know. I mean, basically, you've got 4, 5, 6, you know, you've got $600,000 of project money here, just in buildings and grounds. So if you wanna allocate it differently, you just gotta tell us. That's, you know, that's not a problem at all. Wherever you guys wanna put that money, we will do that. We need to do all these things, but we have other things we need to do too, so.
Well, it's just like you and I talked about, furnaces or heat and air is $700,000 for the PSB.
Right, and this doesn't count using, you know, and for some of those projects, you'd wanna use your fund balance, so this doesn't count using your fund balance. This is what we're you know, putting in the account and taking out. If you're talking about a big project like that, well, we would tap into that new projects account you guys just created, or the general fund, or something like that, to, you know, for those bigger projects. This is just kind of what we put in, we kind of take out type of thing. We're not really making a ton of headway with big projects. This is a big project, but that would come out of the highway, like I said, out of the highway capital. So, you know, but if you wanted to do a different project, we can take it out of a different account. That's for highway, so.
Is there a state bid with that capital equipment can move on, because those are outrageous prices?
We will use the state contract, this is just budgeting for now, yeah. So, well, that's actually a good point to, I mean, I wanna wrap up for you guys, but for capital projects, I mean, we need to have further discussion. We need to have that facilitator come in, and you guys gotta, you know, give us a little more direction on what you want to see.
So, bringing that up and then, where are you at with a facilitator, so?
Yeah, so, we have, so the total cost of a facilitator for one session is gonna be like less than $2,000. So sending out a full RFP is a lot of work for something that's, you don't really need. So the hospital has a contract with a facilitator currently that they use for their strategic plan. So if you guys are okay with that, I would just recommend we piggyback off their contract rather than sending it out to a new bid, so that was kind of my.
That sounds good, so.
Alright, we'll keep moving, I wanna get you guys out of here, I promise that.
Well, let me interrupt you quickly. Okay, for everyone that's going up to Tug Hill Vineyards, what time do you guys wanna be up there?
Well, my wife and Tom's wife is sitting across the street waiting for us.
Oh, okay, well,
6 o'clock at least.
6 o'clock, you wanna be up there by?
Dinner's at 6.
Okay, so how much more do we
Dinner's
have?
at seven.
We're at the, we're
Okay,
at the.
alright.
What was it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean. I thought
Buildings
it
and
said-
grounds.
Maybe it just, well, maybe it just said that something said 6, but, maybe it was beer.
We wanna go now, dinner's at 6.
Cocktail hour starts at 6.
Let me scoop through the rest of this, it'll be 5 minutes. It'll be
Because
Okay,
we,
right.
after he's done, we have one thing that we have to do yet too, so.
Negative 15%, so highways doing, yeah, buildings and grounds doing good. Human resources, we did the software last year, we don't have to do it again this year, so we're down for that. But we increased 13,000 for union negotiation, we got Peterman coming in. Last year we didn't have Peterman, so we added that. No requests out of that department, down 6% for the year, second year in a row where they've been down, so they're trending in a good way for us. County attorney, revenue increase from DSS, 66% of their budget is charged to DSS. I don't know if you knew that, but all of Joan and her whole team, we charge you 66% of that to DSS, so that's a pretty good deal. Again, we increased our outside counsel because we've got union negotiations not only this year, but next fall too. So we used those two line items to cover that, anyone additional we bring out. We did add someone on our health insurance plan, so that went up a little bit. County attorney total up 3.2%. Treasurer, again, this is a department that makes money. Interest rates are up slightly, so our revenue's up slightly. Interest and penalties are up slightly, so our revenue's up slightly. And we do have some attrition in the department, so that cost will save us a little bit there. Treasurer total, this is again a money-making department, so this is not what goes on the levy, this is what comes off the levy. Last year they made 291, this year we're thinking they're gonna make 366, so that's a pretty good jump for the treasurer's department in terms of revenue. County manager, I did increase the travel $1,500 because I haven't been able to go to the spring NISAC conference, and it's a good time to go. All the county managers are there talking budget, and I don't get to participate, so I would like to do that. So that's up $1,500, no other requests. Total budget, 3.4%. Clerk of the board, we do have some attrition over there as well, 2 positions, that will be moving. That's it. So their total cost is down 6%. Legislative, this is you guys. Special ed contingency will keep at $100,000, same contingency you had last year, same as the year before. Regular contingency, $200,000. This doesn't show up under legislative, it shows up under contingency, but it's a good time to put it in the presentation. Requests, you guys have not increased the legislator salary since the year 2000, so I did put in a raise for y'all. I put in a raise last year, you guys took it out, but it is in for you again. If you want to take it out, you can. Take it out. Is that general consensus, or do you want me to?
I'm not gonna comment because I'm not gonna be here, so. That's up to the 90, is what you guys wanna do, so.
I think this is pretty good justification that it's time to bump it up a little bit. But it's, you guys, that's your call, certainly not mine. Legislative total, just up a little bit because of those, the $1,000 there. Outside agencies, okay, we don't wanna spend a lot of time running through all these. The bold, everyone's the same except for if they're bold, okay? CCE, we did 300 last year, they requested 350, we did 320. So I couldn't do the additional 30,000 and keep our levy 0, so we had to cut where we could. Still a great organization, something we absolutely support, but we just couldn't get up for the full 50 grand. Double Play Community Center, not something that we've done in the past, but something that they requested this year. They sent us a letter requesting to get in the budget, and I think it's something that's a worthwhile venture. They're all over the county with their summer rec programs as well. The JCC.
Whoa, that's not correct, then. Is it on double play? Didn't we give them
Yes,
so
we
much?
did, 2 years ago, we
40,000.
gave them
40,000.
40,000.
You
And
did
we
it
spent
as
it
a-
over 5 years, right?
No.
No,
You did it
It was
as
a
a
one-time
one,
thing.
as a
We did it as a
one-time
one-time
shot.
One-time deal.
one time.
I'm saying we put them in as an every year deal.
We can discuss that later.
Okay. JCC Center for Community Studies, they do our annual community survey every year with our, where they call all the people and they give us results. They've never asked for money before, but they're asking each county this year to chip in a little bit. I mean, the results are phenomenal. They really do help us make governing decisions. So they asked for 10, I put in 5.
That's the study of it.
That's when Joel alone comes in and they go over the results and everything. Let's see, IDA, we talked about that change. We've never given them a straight contribution before. What we did this year is draw down all their line items, plus add a straight contribution and put it in all as one. And then everyone else has basically stayed the same. So, fiscal targets, we talked about these 3. This one, you know, like we talked enough about that too. Using the fund balance to balance the IGT rather than whacking the taxpayers every year, to me makes sense. So we can't achieve that target by 2021 if we're gonna use the strategy of using fund balance to ride the wave to the IGT. We're just not gonna be able to. So either we need to change that fiscal target or we need to adjust it to be a little more realistic to the current situation. Plus, like I said, the Maple Ridge pilot, it's got extended anyways. Okay, like last year, if you wanted a tax increase, what would it look like? I will send you guys all this, you can look at it, but basically our tax cap is right about here. So we have 2 windmill projects coming on board, 1 definitely coming on board and Maple Ridge not coming off. So that means our ability to increase the levy is not as much as you think. So if you wanted to increase the tax cap, you could add about $40,000 to the fund balance. Otherwise, you have to go over the tax cap to get any of these. But I'll get this to you guys so you can look at it. And if you want to push it up a little bit, you can, like we did last year. Questions? I'm sorry that was long, but we got through as fast as we could.